Daniel reached his house expecting silence. Instead, the lights were on, and someone else was inside. The porch felt unnaturally warm under his palms as he paused on the first step. His keys jingled lightly in his hand, and for a moment, the sound seemed deafening in the quiet evening. The familiar scent of his home, coffee, laundry, the faint tang of last night's dinner, was missing. In its place, something deliberate, unfamiliar, almost clinical. A faint scrape of a cloth across the hardwood floor made him freeze. Then the hum of water from the kitchen. Slow, steady, deliberate. Daniel's pulse jumped. His mind raced through possibilities, each more absurd than the last. A neighbor? Delivery? Burglar? But no, his son's room was down the hall, the door always locked, and no one else had a key. The living room came into view. And there she was. On her knees, sleeves rolled up, scrubbing with a precision that made the floor gleam unnaturally. She moved with a calm authority that immediately made Daniel feel out of place in his own home. His mind blanked. Recognition hit like a punch. It was the CEO. The woman whose mere presence in a room could make executives rethink decisions, whose signature could seal fates. She shouldn't be here. She couldn't be here. Yet here she was, moving silently, deliberately, with a purpose that unnerved him. "Ma'am," he said, voice cracking. His throat felt dry, unprepared for confrontation. She didn't look up. Not immediately. Her hands worked rhythmically, almost meditatively. Daniel's stomach knotted. "Why, are you here?" he asked again, more firmly. Her gaze lifted slowly, calm but piercing. "I wanted to see for myself." "See, what?" he asked, though his pulse told him he didn't really want to know. "How you live," she said, finally, stepping lightly across the room. "How you carry the weight no one notices." Daniel's first instinct was to close the door and reclaim his privacy. Instead, he remained frozen. There was something magnetic, unsettling, almost judicial about her presence. "You didn't have to do this," he said, his voice catching. "I know," she replied simply. "But I wanted to." Her eyes swept across the room with a quiet precision. The crooked picture frame, the chipped coffee mug, the small drawing of a stick figure holding a smaller hand taped to the fridge. Every detail was noted. Every imperfection catalogued. Daniel's chest tightened. He felt exposed, but not in a threatening way. She wasn't here to judge him publicly. She was here to see. To observe silently. She paused by the kitchen counter and placed a thin, unassuming folder carefully on the surface. "I reviewed this today," she said softly. "By accident." Daniel's eyes flicked to it. What is it?" "My mistake," she said, voice calm. "And your silence." Silence filled the room, heavier than words. Daniel's mind scrambled. He wanted to speak, to demand explanation, but he couldn't. There was a strange power in being seen without need for words. "You were supposed to be promoted last year," she added, tilting her head slightly. Daniel's brow furrowed. "That decision wasn't." "I know whose decision it was," she interrupted. "And I know who stood in your way." He exhaled slowly. Her gaze softened almost imperceptibly. "Sometimes, the right work goes unnoticed. That's why I'm here." Daniel's hand drifted toward the folder, hesitant. Something told him opening it now would change the rhythm of the night, the way he understood his work, his life. Yet curiosity gnawed at him. The CEO moved again, deliberate, almost like a shadow passing silently through the room. She paused by the doorway, one hand resting lightly on the frame, looking back at him. "When he wakes tomorrow," she said, nodding toward his son's closed door, "tell him someone noticed." Daniel swallowed, mind racing. Who notices a life lived quietly? Who rewards silence and sacrifice without asking for attention or praise? The hum of the refrigerator filled the silence between them, punctuated by faint creaks of the floorboards under her careful weight. Every movement, every pause, was deliberate, calculated. "You've carried more than most will ever know," she continued softly. "And yet you've done it with integrity. That doesn't go unseen." Daniel finally found his voice. I didn't expect anyone to notice," he said, a tremor in his chest betraying his years of silent effort. She smiled faintly. "Perhaps it's time you understood that someone always does." The air seemed heavier now, charged with tension and understanding. Daniel's eyes wandered to the folder again. He didn't open it immediately. Instead, he absorbed the quiet, every polished surface, every organized detail, every unspoken acknowledgement that had filled his home tonight. His thoughts wandered briefly to his son, sleeping peacefully, unaware of the invisible burdens his father carried. He realized that part of the CEO's visit was not just for him, but for the life he had built quietly, the sacrifices that defined him, and the acknowledgement that even unseen effort could matter. Minutes stretched. Daniel's hand hovered over the folder. The CEO's figure lingered in the doorway for a heartbeat longer, then slipped out silently, leaving only the soft click of the door behind her. Alone, Daniel sank into the nearest chair. His gaze rested on the folder. Relief. Curiosity. A strange weight lifted, replaced by a deeper one, the awareness that his sacrifices were finally acknowledged, but the reward remained uncertain. He didn't yet know what this meant for his life, his work, or the path forward. But he knew one thing: tonight had shifted everything. And somewhere deep inside, a thought settled: the story wasn't over. It had just begun. The morning light seeped through the blinds, streaking Daniel's living room with thin golden lines. Dust floated lazily in the shafts, catching the sun like tiny suspended jewels. He lay for a moment in bed, listening to the quiet hum of his home. It felt different. Somehow, cleaner. Ordered. Yet, not just in the way a house feels after tidying, it was intentional, precise. His gaze drifted to the kitchen counter. The folder the CEO had left last night sat there, neat and unassuming. He hadn't touched it yet. Something about it felt heavy, not in weight but in meaning. He wondered if opening it would unravel the calm that had settled over the house, or if it would pull him straight into the whirlwind of last night's unexpected visit. He rose slowly, feeling the subtle tension in his shoulders. The air smelled faintly of citrus, like she had passed through, leaving her signature behind. Each movement he made felt under scrutiny, though he was alone. Every step across the polished floorboards echoed slightly, reminding him of the night before. Finally, he reached the folder. His fingers hovered above it. With a deep breath, he opened it. Inside, neatly stacked papers and notes stared back at him. Nothing shocking. Just the quiet evidence of his work, reports he had filed months ago, emails he had drafted meticulously, minutes from meetings he had handled with care. And yet, something felt different. This wasn't an audit. This was attention, intentional and deliberate. A single note rested on top, written in her precise, unmistakable handwriting. "Your efforts do not go unnoticed. Keep moving forward." Daniel exhaled slowly. The words weren't loud. They weren't grand. But they carried weight, heavier than any promotion letter or bonus. Someone powerful had seen him, really seen him, not just his work, but the sacrifices he had made silently. He wandered through the house, noticing small, subtle changes she had left behind. The kitchen table was cleared and arranged, his desk in the study was neat, a pen placed exactly where it was needed. Even the pile of his son's school papers had been straightened. Not overt, not showy. Just, noticed. A strange mix of gratitude and unease settled in his chest. He felt relief, someone saw what he had been doing all these years. And yet, uncertainty lingered. What came next? By mid-morning, Daniel forced himself to leave for the office. The streets felt sharper, colder than usual, the crisp air carrying the scent of car exhaust and distant coffee shops. His mind replayed the folder, the words, the meticulous attention. Each step toward the office felt like walking on a wire, balanced between pride and apprehension. When he entered the office, the familiar hum of activity greeted him. Phones rang, keyboards clattered, printers whirred. He made his way to his desk, and then he noticed Mark. Mark leaned against the frame of the conference room door, arms crossed, brow furrowed. His eyes tracked Daniel the moment he stepped in. A subtle smirk curved his lips. Daniel recognized it immediately, jealousy wrapped in practiced composure. "Looks like someone got a special visit last night," Mark muttered to a colleague nearby, loud enough for Daniel to hear. The colleague barely stifled a laugh. Daniel's jaw tightened. He ignored the comment and settled at his desk, unfolding the folder. The papers inside were familiar, but this time, reading them felt different, more validating, more personal. Each note, each highlighted email, each annotation whispered the same truth: someone had noticed, someone had cared enough to acknowledge what had gone unseen. Mark didn't leave. His eyes followed every movement, subtle and calculating. He whispered under his breath, "Guess some people get recognized before others." Daniel didn't respond. Not yet. Reacting would give Mark the satisfaction of confrontation, and Daniel had no intention of handing that to him. The CEO's message from the previous night replayed in Daniel's mind. Keep moving forward. Forward meant more than just work, it meant navigating office politics, navigating jealousy, navigating recognition in a world that often rewarded noise over quiet effort. He opened a second envelope inside the folder, smaller, almost hidden. A simple line. "We'll discuss this later today. Your efforts will be acknowledged." A chill ran down his spine, not from cold, but anticipation. The acknowledgement hinted at something more, something beyond words. His stomach tightened. The reward was coming, but with it, the unseen currents of tension, rivalry, and expectation would follow. Throughout the morning, Daniel noticed small signs of Mark's irritation. A misplaced document conveniently left near his desk. A hushed whisper as he passed. The occasional smirk, the slight narrowing of the eyes. Daniel realized that recognition, even subtle, even pending, could awaken jealousy like a dormant storm. Yet he couldn't let it disturb him. Not now. Not when the acknowledgement, though indirect, meant more than anything he had received before. He kept his movements calm, deliberate, careful. Every step, every gesture, a quiet assertion of his presence. By mid-afternoon, the office grew quieter. Meetings had ended, phones were silent. Daniel's thoughts returned to the CEO's note. Her acknowledgement was a spark, but it carried expectations. Someone had seen his sacrifices, but now the stakes were subtly rising. Mark lingered nearby, a silent shadow, clearly unsettled by what he didn't fully understand. Daniel caught his gaze. Their eyes met for a brief second, a silent battle of recognition and resentment. Then Mark looked away, pretending disinterest. But Daniel knew better. He returned to his desk, reviewing the folder again. Every note, every highlighted point, every comment left a weight and a purpose behind it. Recognition without reward was a delicate thing, it could inspire, or provoke. The afternoon wore on. Daniel could feel the undercurrent in the office, the tension, the subtle rivalry. Every colleague seemed sharper, quicker, as if they sensed the invisible thread connecting him to someone powerful. Then, a ping from his email. The CEO. A brief, simple line. "I'll see you later." Daniel exhaled, leaning back in his chair. Relief mixed with tension. Gratitude intertwined with uncertainty. And beyond it all, a new challenge loomed. How would the quiet acknowledgement unfold in a world where jealousy and ambition waited at every turn? The clock ticked on, sunlight fading into amber. Daniel sat at his desk, folder open, mind racing. The morning's subtle signs, the quiet acknowledgement, Mark's jealous gaze, all pointed to one undeniable truth: his life was changing, and he was only beginning to understand the cost of being seen. The chapter ended, but the story was far from over. Every glance, every whispered comment, every subtle gesture now mattered. Daniel realized that acknowledgement, even silent and indirect, could shift everything, and in doing so, set the stage for challenges, rewards, and revelations yet to come. Daniel stepped into the office that morning with the same routine steps he had taken 1,000 times before, yet something felt different. The usual hum of phones, keyboards, and conversation seemed sharper, almost charged. His eyes scanned familiar faces, but there was an unfamiliar weight in the air, as if the office itself sensed the shift coming. Mark's gaze met his across the room, sharp, calculating, measuring. There was a glint of suspicion, an edge of jealousy that Daniel had noticed before but never so pronounced. Daniel walked past without acknowledgement, keeping his expression calm. He had learned long ago that tension was best observed quietly before action. A private message from the CEO arrived minutes later: "Please come to my office now." Daniel's pulse quickened, but his exterior remained composed. He knew this was the moment. He had anticipated acknowledgement, maybe even a reward, but he had no idea just how monumental this meeting would be. The executive office was stark and imposing, sunlight filtering through blinds in sharp lines across the polished floor. The CEO's figure stood near the window, calm, poised, radiating authority. "Daniel," she began, her voice steady, "you've been patient, consistent, and discreet in a way most people cannot sustain." Daniel nodded silently, unsure how to respond. His mind raced through possibilities. A bonus? A small acknowledgement? Perhaps recognition for last night's efforts? She continued, "There was someone who blocked your progression, someone who misused their authority and delayed what was rightly yours. That person has been suspended pending review." Daniel's chest tightened. Relief mingled with a twinge of disbelief. His career had been stalled not by lack of skill, but by obstruction. Now the road was clear. The CEO gestured to the folder on the table. Daniel opened it. Inside were official documents, charts, and directives. He read quickly, each line revealing the reality: he had been promoted. Not just a small step, but the highest-ranking position in his department. Authority, oversight, decision power, everything he had worked toward was now his. "Daniel," the CEO said, her eyes meeting his, "this position isn't a reward. It's a correction. You have the trust and responsibility that come with it. But know this, with visibility comes scrutiny, and not everyone will welcome the change." Daniel exhaled, steadying himself. Gratitude washed over him, tempered by the awareness that this was only the beginning. Meanwhile, Mark's misunderstanding began to take shape. He had seen Daniel entering private meetings, noticed subtle shifts in access, and assumed it was a simple CEO reward. He had no idea Daniel now outranked him. Suspicion turned to malice, and malice quickly twisted into a story in Mark's mind. "Everyone knows what's going on," Mark muttered under his breath to a colleague later that morning. "I don't know what she sees in him. There's no way this is just work. Must be more personal." The colleague raised an eyebrow, sensing the tension. Mark's words were carefully veiled, but the insinuation was clear: Daniel was being accused, in hushed tones, of having a secret connection with the CEO, an affair, whispered and speculative, entirely untrue. Little did Mark know the full magnitude of the promotion. Daniel returned to his office, aware of the shift in the atmosphere. Whispers followed him, eyes lingered, but he focused on the work ahead. Authority brought responsibility, and responsibility meant awareness of every potential challenge. He couldn't ignore Mark, but he wouldn't rise to provocation either. Later that afternoon, the CEO stopped by Daniel's office briefly. Her presence was commanding yet subtle, a reminder that the real weight of leadership was not in rewards, but in vigilance. "You will face resistance," she said quietly. "Staff will need direction. Some will leave. Others will resist quietly. This department will see change, and you are the one steering it. Do not mistake visibility for weakness. Daniel nodded. The message was clear: his promotion was not a gift, it was a responsibility and a challenge. Mark, meanwhile, continued his quiet campaign. He made subtle remarks during meetings, questioned decisions, and attempted to undermine Daniel in front of colleagues. Daniel noticed, as any competent leader would, but did not react openly. Every word, every glance, every maneuver was observed and catalogued. By late afternoon, Daniel felt the full weight of the new role. Recognition had been granted, but with it came scrutiny, expectation, and resistance. He could feel the first ripple of challenges forming, small, quiet, and insidious. Mark thought he had the advantage, operating in ignorance. He did not know Daniel's authority now extended above him, or the extent of the CEO's trust. Every act of jealousy was a miscalculation, one that would soon backfire. As Daniel gathered his documents for the day, he reflected briefly: leadership was rarely about celebration. It was about steering through tension, navigating hidden currents, and maintaining integrity under observation. And in the quiet that followed, Daniel realized the story was far from over. The promotion was a turning point, yes, but the true test of leadership had only just begun. The morning sun filtered through Daniel's office window, casting long shadows across the floor. The atmosphere was charged. It wasn't noise or chaos, it was the weight of expectation, authority, and the knowledge that yesterday had changed everything. Daniel sat at his desk, reviewing documents, but his mind wasn't on work. Mark's subtle undermining from the previous day lingered in his awareness. The whispers, the thinly veiled accusations, the half-smiles, they were small, but persistent, like the first hints of a storm. Daniel knew that unchecked, this could fester, breeding contempt among the team. He didn't act rashly. Instead, he wrote a clear, concise report to the CEO, detailing Mark's behavior, the undermining, the rumors, the subtle attempts to sway other team members. Every observation was factual, unemotional, professional. Daniel's strategy was simple: handle the problem through the proper channels, not through personal confrontation. Within hours, the CEO responded. Daniel's inbox pinged with a single line: understood. We will act. Your leadership must not be compromised. By midday, an emergency departmental meeting was called. The usual chatter stopped immediately as the room sensed the weight of the gathering. Heads turned as the CEO entered, her presence commanding silence and attention without a word. Daniel rose, standing beside her with calm authority. Team, the CEO began, her voice firm and measured, we are making structural changes. Certain positions will be redefined, leadership roles reassigned. Some staff will transition to other departments. These changes are necessary to ensure the integrity and performance of this department. Eyes widened. Murmurs rippled through the room. Daniel could see the subtle realization forming on some faces: he wasn't just recognized privately yesterday, he now stood publicly at the top of this department, entrusted with its leadership. The CEO's gaze swept the room and lingered on Mark. The shift was subtle but undeniable. Mark's smirk faltered, the jealousy and misunderstanding of Daniel's promotion now became starkly clear. He had assumed Daniel's advancement was minor, a token recognition. He had misjudged entirely. You, Mark, the CEO said, her voice calm but authoritative, will be transitioning to another branch. This move ensures that your talents continue to serve the organization while maintaining cohesion and morale here. Mark's face paled. The room was silent. Daniel felt the tension release slightly, not from triumph, but from relief. The threat had been neutralized without spectacle. Staff could see the order restored and fairness maintained, and Daniel's authority stood unquestioned. Daniel returned to his desk, his hands steady. He had gained authority, yes, but he had also gained a deeper understanding. Leadership was not just about recognition, but about foresight, patience, and the courage to act through proper channels. Throughout the afternoon, the department adjusted. Conversations shifted subtly, respect for Daniel became evident in body language, in the way colleagues presented ideas, in how decisions were now met with consideration rather than challenge. The office was still alive with activity, but it moved differently now. Every interaction carried the understanding that Daniel was not just someone who had been acknowledged, he was a leader, trusted and tested. Later, Daniel reflected quietly in his office. The folder from the CEO sat open on his desk, its message simple yet profound: your efforts do not go unnoticed. Keep moving forward. The words had carried him through recognition, challenge, and now responsibility. Outside, the city hummed with the usual rhythm of work and life, oblivious to the shifts within these walls. Daniel rose from his chair, straightened his tie, and walked toward the window. He could see the street stretching into the distance, the world moving forward as he had moved forward, calm, deliberate, aware. Mark would adapt to his new assignment, and the team here would continue to perform under Daniel's leadership. The CEO had acted decisively, but it was Daniel's clarity, professionalism, and strategic approach that ensured the transition was smooth and effective.